What's going on, guys? Aarava here, and welcome back to the Pitlane podcast, episode number 48 today for the Spanish Grand Prix review. You're joined by myself, Arav, and Callum today for what has been a very enjoyable Spanish Grand Prix, Callum. It was quite a tasty one to finally see Vettel and Hamilton actually have a go at it on track, side by side for a few brief moments, and generally pushing each other all race long. And behind them as well, although the gap was at the end of it, 1 minute 15 to Daniel Ricciardo from Hamilton, there was still plenty of action going on behind. We had the Force Indias doing really well, and a big star of the show, I think, is Verline for all of us as well, and P8 there doing a brilliant job. But generally, at the front, it was a great race to witness.
Yeah, it was a Spanish Grand Prix, which I think in recent years we've become quite accustomed to being quite a boring Grand Prix. But last year, obviously the two Mercedes crashing into each other opened up a whole host of race winners. But today as well, and carrying on the theme of 2017 of not knowing who's winning the Grand Prix, because obviously we got Bottas last time out. Yeah. Obviously he went up in some smoke, but we'll speak about him later. But it was the battle that we've been finally wanting, because I think all season we've had a little tease between Hamilton and Vettel, strategy battles, this, that and the other, but we haven't seen them fully wheel to wheel and almost touching wheels in some cases. But overall, incredible Grand Prix. This is a race that we all want. We want to see a battle right at the front. It's all right having a nice battle for 6th place, but you really want to see it right at the front.
Yeah, it was really good and very, very tense with, as you mentioned, a little bit of contact there. That was a really, really tense moment. The first time, because it looked so close as well. They had the great camera angle where it's down the straight, so you couldn't quite tell from that angle when Vettel was coming out for that last pit stop. Obviously, Hamilton gained quite a bit in the virtual safety car period. I think Vettel himself was saying in the post-race kind of room when he's talking to Ricciardo that he didn't really know inside the cockpit how he lost the time. But obviously, we could kind of tell Mercedes timed that quite well. And yeah, it was a battle between them two on track, but also the two teams, I think, they had to do a lot of kind of maths in their heads and really kind of butt heads to kind of get each other, the one over the other. You could see Mercedes guys just taking maybe that odd 1 or 2 more laps and leaving Hamilton out just to fully check over their calculations for the strategy to make sure. And it's kind of good to see that Ferrari are keeping up with them, because in the past pretty much been Ferrari making mistakes all the time and Mercedes being pretty calm on the strategy. But this time it didn't really feel like they had it under control fully.
Yeah, it was a solid strategy battle as well, because it was a lot of dummying, a lot of, speed up now to try and force them into the pits. Yeah. We might do a plan C. And you've got to say, I think it wasn't Ferrari's downfall today. I think the reason they came second today was not because of their strategy blunder. It was the fact that I think Mercedes had one over on them today. That initial solid couple of laps where Hamilton really put in the lap times and really looked like Mercedes were on that 3-step strategy. And then and then for Vettel, obviously, he had to pit. Ferrari had to try and cover them. He had no other opportunity, because otherwise Hamilton might have undercut them. But by forcing Vettel in, Mercedes were just like, "Wait, lads, we're staying out for another. We've got them now. We can stay out." And Mercedes really did have it under control. But I think we could talk about the race start, which was quite an interesting one. It's probably the most amount of carbon fibre that was flown in quite a while.
Yeah, a lot of contact there, flying about through, especially to exit of turn 1, then through to turn 2. We've said it's been pretty clean so far this season for race starts, but it's all kicking off. So obviously the major one was Raikkonen getting a bit of a tap from, I think it was Bottas on the front left to his rear right. That kind of, as he put it, jumped his car, made it jump towards the left-hand side. Then pretty much he couldn't do anything. At the time, it looked like, in the moment that maybe Verstappen tried to move, but actually it was a case in point of Verstappen had nowhere to go, so he was going off track anyway, and then Raikkonen's car kind of got catapulted towards the Red Bull, and then you could see on the replay, instant impact, dented his suspension, turned the tyre inwards, and then him and Verstappen awkwardly placed in turn 2, which then in turn kind of had a domino effect, because it meant Massa had to kind of dive out of the way and shove Alonso off onto the gravel, which was really unfortunate. He moved down to P12, I think it was, by the end of lap 1, so a lot of crazy stuff happening there.
Yeah, the race start, going into turn 2, it reminded me of 2009, back in the day when we had that massive crash at the back of the field and Hamilton having to pick his way through all the carbon fibre. But actually looking at the front row, it was another case of Hamilton's poor starts again, which I think today, obviously today was a case of just a Hamilton poor start. It wasn't the slipstream that really got Vettel into turn 1, because Vettel was already alongside him after going in line with the pit lane exit. He was a very solid start from Vettel, especially going into the race. There was some I'm not overly sure. I think Ted Kravitz on Sky was talking about some steering wheel change and this magic paddle.
They kind of changed the paddle. Your camera's gone off.
Yeah. LOL.
Yeah, they changed the paddle on the back, so it kind of copied Mercedes essentially. But also at the same time, we saw in F2 and GP3, both times the Pulsars got a worse start than P2. So going into the race, at least from what I'd seen from there, and like some analysts saying that definitely Hamilton had to be wary of Vettel, and exactly as they said, that happened just like it did back in F2 and GP3. So I wasn't majorly surprised actually that Vettel got the better getaway. I was just surprised that then obviously the contact that came behind, and Bottas, for me, kind of broke way too early, and I think that was unlucky, not for him, but for Kimi then, because the fact he broke much earlier was actually why then he made that contact eventually. If he kept his nose in there, could have been all fine. Him and Kimi would have gone side by side. Verstappen probably would have got squeezed off. So, yeah, that was a bit of a weird one. I don't know, a little bit of caution there from the Finn and the Mercedes. Kind of odd to see.
You can't really put it, because obviously there was a lot of steward messages saying that we're not going to look into this, going to look into that, but you can't penalise someone for being too cautious into a corner. I think right on board with Bottas, you saw that he had a very good run, but he was boxed in. Obviously, Hamilton on the left, Vettel in front of him. He couldn't have gone anywhere, so he just backed out of it, and probably backed out of it maybe a little bit too much for his liking anyway, because he lost a lot of time. But obviously for the drivers around him, because obviously at that point being squeezed onto the curbing. Obviously, Raikkonen can't go anywhere else because you can't go any more left because he's Verstappen. You can't go any more right without squeezing Bottas off. And then Verstappen, he was just minding his own business. He did what he did, I think, similar to Russia, where he kind of just dived it down the outside and just kind of kept his car there and just hoped of something happening.
A space would open up.
And he just very unlucky. But it made me laugh as well. I think it's the first year where they've introduced the bollard after turn 2, where if you cut across it, you have to go around the bollard, similar to Russia. I think it's the first time this year.
Similar sort of thing.
And it did make me laugh when they said, oh, well, these two, both Raikkonen and Verstappen haven't done it. It's like, yeah, and you ride on board, they physically can't.
There's a
Obviously,
reason. Yeah,
Raikkonen's tyre at a completely different angle, and then I'm not sure why either driver both carried on. It was very odd. Normally, if you've got suspension damage, don't just pull up.
Odd one. I think Kimi's tied in fully dent in straight away, so it's almost maybe he didn't notice until he went over the sleeping policeman and then got on the track and was oh sorry, the left tire's completely bent in. So that was really unfortunate for both of them. And later on, obviously Bottas had the engine failure. Interestingly enough, that was Bottas's first engine. Mercedes had the second engine in Saturday morning. FP3 had an issue. They swapped that out. So all round bad luck for the Finns, because if Bottas had kept that second engine in, that wouldn't have been an issue. Mercedes did not want to have that engine in for a reason, and the reason was quite simply that. It went up in flames and was caught on fire right at the bottom of the engine cover.
In Russia, was it Russia that there was very sceptical about that engine anyway? Obviously leading the race, and they was quite scared of the mileage that they'd already put on that engine. So I'm very surprised that it lasted that long with such concern from Mercedes. So it's still very impressive, though, that an engine has gone that far. And I know that's the whole point of these engines these days. You've got to keep pushing them. But then you look at Stoffel Van Dorn right at the back taking another engine penalty.
Fifth element before the race.
You look at it.
That's even before the calamities he had, which is something that we haven't mentioned even before the intro. But yeah, I guess we could talk about it because we won't talk about it later. Van Dorn, weirdly out of the Grand Prix, just didn't look like he really understood how wide his car was. Almost a bit of a rookie mistake, really, which is odd because he's a GP2 champion, raced in Super Formula in Japan, but just turned in way too much, I think, and aggressively tapped Massa's tyre, and then that was just like Raikkonen's tyre, just bent in and broke. So yeah, it's a really torrid start to the season.
Yeah, it was just, you just looked at it and go, why do you turn in? Why did you turn in there? And Massa came from a very, very long way back, and it's not like
that was a bit of a joke.
Saw him.
The amount, the speed the Williams Mercedes had on that Honda engine was an absolute joke. It was really quite soul crushing if you're a McLaren fan just to watch that. So that was quite annoying. But yeah, moving back to the front then. So Bottas with that engine failure, it did mean that Ricciardo got a pretty easy podium. He was all by himself. He was 1 minute 15 seconds back from first place, and then quite some way ahead of Perez and Ocon, who finished in a great 4th and 5th. We'll get to that in a little bit for Force India. But Ricciardo, very quiet evening, but he'll take that. He'll take that. But shame for Verstappen. He could have been very much there. And I think maybe the Red Bull fight could have been tasty because Verstappen did have the measure over Ricciardo in qualifying. So that could have been a fight that were kind of robbed of during that race. But,
I think one blessing in disguise, which if you think about it, it just kind of makes sense, is with both Verstappen and Raikkonen being taken out of play, it allowed Hamilton and Vettel to play a lot more with pushing gaps, pitting earlier. And I'm not saying that, we need that all the time, but it did allow them top two, especially the fact that obviously Mercedes, they had a singular car, Ferrari had a singular car. Ironically, the top three teams in Formula 1 only had
one
car finishing. But it definitely allowed them to just play, just keep pushing it a little bit more because, and I think that's probably what's allowed it to be such a good race is they had complete freedom over when they could pit, and obviously the only issue that we had
was Bottas holding up Vettel, and that was actually unfortunate. Although it was like genius from Mercedes to do that, and it was like, okay, they're playing it really smart. It was also sort of like annoying in a way. It's like just a neutral, just to watching it because like you've got 2 against 1 basically ganging up on the one Ferrari, so it was kind of annoying in that sense. But it was really great strategy play from Mercedes, and if the engine hadn't blown up, that would have been a really solid race for Bottas in a way. Kind of, okay, you did your job, you got your teammate the win there, and you're also going to come in a good 3rd place. So job well done, thank you very much.
Yeah, but it did allow probably the move of the race. The move of the race.
The move of the race. Probably one of the race moves of the season, really.
Incredible manoeuvre from Vettel.
Shimmy and shake, just, he went a little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit left, and then right on the right, got on the grass a little bit almost because of the momentum he had. He almost kind of swung himself off the circuit like Hamilton did back in 2016 against Rosberg, but just managed to make it through, squeeze through, and just great stuff.
Just solid racing. That's what 2017's given us. Is even with the DRS, and it could have been argued that it would have been an easy DRS overtake. Sometimes DRS overtakes aren't that easy, especially when you're moving about all the place. Yeah. Exactly. It's just there to give you an advantage. But no, it just shows, especially just Hamilton and Vettel, that the determination between them two. That I think Hamilton was. You could see the hunger today, especially
he's out
in his
of breath
tone
a
of
little
voice.
bit on the team radio.
And very oddly,
puffing. Like for the first time, we've seen how physical these 2017 cars have been. Haven't seen it too much, but Spain probably one of the most demanding tracks we've gone to, obviously so far. So you could kind of tell in the team. I don't know about Vettel looked pretty calm, sounding pretty calm, but Hamilton for sure at some point you could hear it physically like.
Yeah, it was just like, right,
about the gap.
Tell me how far ahead he is. It was
you
could tell how much he was pushing.
He was really going for it.
It gave us a lot of team radio. I've got to mention team radio today because there's a lot of shut up, leave me alone. Taking a page out of Kimi's book, but I think Hamilton said it. I think we had it from Sainz. I think we had it from quite a lot. I think Kvyat at one point, but I think hands down the best team radio we had today was Kevin Magnussen's when he the incident
really
coming out the pit lane. And we'll probably speak about the incident coming out the pit lane in a minute, but Magnussen was quite calm. But the engineer that was telling him to be calm sounded vexed, bare vexed. I'm not being funny.
He was shook. His team radio guy was shook.
Come down!
Yeah, he was the one shouting, and then Magnussen goes, the team radio guy was shook and said, explain to us so we can tell Charlie about it. Tell us the details. Magnussen just calm as ever, just goes, he was on the grass, he pushed me, that could have been an accident, could have been nasty, and then he's like, calm down!
That's the thing, and Magnussen's normally quite a chill person on the radio.
He is. Yeah,
I'm not. I think that Haas engineer was quite vocal in the way he was
melodramatic. I think is the word maybe. Yeah, kind of weird. But so after Ricciardo, absolutely awesome job for Force India at this stage to have so many points now over Williams and Toro Rosso, who, I thought Toro Rosso, I've been disappointed by Toro Rosso. I really thought there'd be a lot more up there, but they just haven't been there, unfortunately for them. And so Force India have really capitalised on that, and also Williams falling apart in this race, 4th and 5th there. For Perez, obviously almost a veteran of F1 at this point, so that's just another solid driver that we've seen him do time and time again. But for Ocon as well, his teammate, new to the team, 5th place, to keep up with his teammate and be right there in the same camera shot with him. Absolutely great for both of them. And so I think I don't know what it was. I think it was 12 points going into this race or something like that. They were already ahead of Williams. Let me quickly check, Callum.
Yeah, there were 12 points ahead.
Now there's some considerable amount ahead now.
So 12? They've picked up 22 points today, and that's solid.
Stellar.
That's more than Red Bull.
Job.
More than Red Bull and Ferrari. So they really can't complain. But
yeah, well, now here are the points. So Mercedes 161, Ferrari 153, Red Bull 72. But then here's the kicker. Force India 53 points to Toro Rosso's 19 and Williams 18. So Toro Rosso have also overtaken Williams, but Force India almost kind of looking towards Red Bull, which is fantastic for them.
Which is interesting to say. That we'll probably have a little talk about Red Bull in a minute, but to say they're, well, in what was on the run-up to this weekend, the new RB14, it was going to be that much of a radical upgrade. We'll gloss over that. It's just very solid from Force India, and also just below them, Nico Hülkenberg 10 places ahead of Julian Palmer. Let's just think about that. 10 places ahead.
And they both didn't have very good qualifying. So Hülkenberg also had a great race.
Hulkenberg had a pretty poor qualifying. So
you can see why Renault hired him. You can see why Renault hired him.
Hulkenberg, Perez, Ocon, bossing it.
We've heard some rumours. Can you imagine Alonso Hulkenberg in that Renault car, where Alonso would take that Renault to? You know, Hulkenberg got sixth. You know, if Alonso was right up there, that you know, we've seen. Okay, Alonso was a little bit happier because of the qualifying yesterday. P7, by the way, we couldn't do a podcast yesterday, but that was in itself Alonso's better performance than the race. The race was kind of bottlenecked by the car. But Alonso, massively impressive for P7, just drove the wheels off that car, perfect lap for him, and, you know, happy he was. But going into this Grand Prix, there are these continuous thoughts about, you know, it is basically a miracle job for McLaren to keep Alonso happy. And so imagine if he was in that Renault car, you know, both drivers. Because at this point, Renault, at what point, I was going to tweet about this, didn't really tweet about it in the end, but at what point do Renault kind of go, right, Palmer, you just are just shit. Like, we do need to maybe even think about bringing in Sorokin in replacement of you, because you are just so slow and crap. Like,
I know Sorokin,
where it gets to that.
He was in the car. Sorokin was in the car this weekend, and he was last in FP1. So, but you do look at it, and wasn't the excuse this weekend something to do with hacking of computers? This whole cyber attack that's gone across the world.
But Hulkenberg wasn't affected by that. Yeah, like, he still did the job.
Which is slightly ironic to see. Isn't Renault still sponsored by Microsoft?
Yes, they are. Yeah. I don't think it was a full thing. I think it was blown out of proportion a little bit by Crofty in the communications. I think it was like Renault the company more so than maybe Renault the team itself. Maybe there was only a few little components of the Renault F1 team that are affected by that hack. But I don't think it's any excuse for Palmer, really.
Why is that? Sorry, why is there 9 places between them two drivers? This is what I can't get my head around.
Yeah, it's just unacceptable, really. If you're looking at it from like just a team boss perspective, like when you look at that on paper, it's just no. Just no.
Yeah, but,
so behind Hulkenberg was Sainz, Verline, and Kvyat. Verline was actually ahead of Sainz on track, but Verline, unfortunately, with a pit lane entry, there was a bollard apparently he had to go on the right of, and he, I think, cut across on the left, so he got a 5-second, which is really unfortunate, but he pulled off a absolutely fan-fucking-tastic, excuse my language, one-stop race, soft tyre till lap 31 or what was it, then the virtual safety car came in, medium tyres. What a drive for Verline. P8, that is huge at this stage of the season for Sauber to get that, because Sauber waited till Brazil of last year to get their points, to get that constructed position. For them to already get points on the board here in Spain is amazing. Amazing.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And it proves Verline, ever since he's come back into the car and back into the team and back into Formula 1, he's bossed it. He's really performed and shown why he deserves the seat over Giovinazzi, who did start off the season very well. So he didn't put a foot wrong today, apart from the penalty, which you just look at it and you go, why did he not go to the right of the bollard? Like, it's just a little petty little thing. It would have cost you 5/10 maybe in the current situation, but you know, especially now with that old Ferrari engine, they might struggle towards the end of the season. So by racking up the points now, it's very, very solid. And maybe if Ericsson can sneak into the points at some point as well.
Exactly.
I think Sauber will be very happy.
He was ahead of both Toro Rosso. So that's great for Sauber, for him. And disappointing for Toro Rosso, you know. They just got knocked out of Q2 and just haven't looked like they weren't really that interesting all weekend in terms of looking like they were going to take the fight to either Renault or Force India. I mean, the Renault obviously came out of nowhere, but as soon as Hulkenberg was in that position up there ahead of them, at no point did they look like they were going to catch Hulkenberg. They were catching, obviously, the cars around them, you know, the Haas cars. They eventually both overtook their respective Haas cars. Obviously, we'll talk about it at the end, but Magnussen with that unfortunate puncher in the end, which helped Kvyat, but Kvyat was right up behind Magnussen. Grosjean had already fallen back before that, but Sainz had to overtake before. And so, yeah, a little bit, you know, as I mentioned, I thought personally, I think I made that prediction that now looking back at it, it's going to be, when we get to the end of the season, I'm going to look so wrong at my prediction, because I thought Toro Rosso were going to be so much better. I'd hope they're going to be better, because I'm warming a little bit to just as a team, I'm warming to them, and it's just so annoying to see them. They've always promised that step up, and they've never made that step up. Yeah,
they're hovering, aren't they? And especially
just
after. Can we do a word on Kvyat? Because he was at the back.
Stellar job,
absolutely incredible.
All to it of okay, they're not there, but Kvyat, I tweeted that as well. Comparing him and Stroll. Kvyat back row next to Van Dorn up into 9th place. Stroll,
incredible.
Similar sort of position. Had his teammate had a spin, puncher, and whatever it was, a clash, extra pit stop. It wasn't a puncher per se, just a clash and extra pit stop because of that. And Massa finished ahead of him. Stroll is just same with Palmer, both of them. What is
you look at it?
Just frustrating to see why they're in Formula One cars. It's frustrating.
Well, Massa didn't Massa make another? Well, he made one stop because of his puncture. Well, Massa had a puncture. The end of story. He had a puncture and he still finished ahead of his teammate. I can't. Let's talk about Kvyat again because I like him.
Yeah. Let's go back to that first one. Yeah.
The fact. Did you listen to his interview after qualifying?
No, I didn't catch it straight
fuming.
After.
He basically said the entire car needs changing. Literally every element of the car needs changing because out of FP1 and FP2, he said it was just and he said it didn't even get worse overnight. It was just all along, and the balance and everything was terrible for qualifying. So whatever they did, and obviously there isn't much they can do from qualifying to race. Well, he clearly liked the change, and he went straight up into P9. So that I think he can be very, very happy with his new official girlfriend because it is FOM official.
Oh yeah, it's girlfriend. FOM official. Yeah,
with his girlfriend.
That's how
and
you know.
That's
how you know.
I think Toro Rosso can still be happy with today. To say, they didn't get Q3.
2 point scoring positions with one of your drivers at the very tail end of the grid. You can't be too disappointed. In the grand scheme of things, obviously they'll still be annoyed, and here's hoping as I said, warming to them. I hope that they can get some upgrades on the car and start to challenge up a little bit more ahead against the likes of Hulkenberg and that Renault, and then the 2 Force Indias, which are kind of the main target, I would guess, for the midfield. Really, I think it's pretty much Force India. Then you've got kind of a bit of merge Renault and Toro Rosso, Williams kind of all together. Williams sort of flip flop. They were looking like they were well ahead of Force India first few rounds, then now lately dropping down with Stroll just. I thought he would get. I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'll get better, but he's seemingly gotten worse as the season's got on almost. So, yeah,
at least he's finishing.
At least he's finishing, but no points.
Coming from
no points for Williams. I can't remember who tweeted it, but it's surprising to see where they are now. Back to pre-2014, considering back in 2014 they were like the second fastest team almost. And so now they're kind of fallen back into that kind of rut they were in beforehand. So
it's weird,
frustrating for them. And equally frustrating, Haas
with
the puncher for Magnussen. Real shame because he was ahead of Grosjean, doing a better job in the race than Grosjean, and then falling back to 14th place with the extra pit stop. Really quite frustrating for them. Grosjean still comes home in 10th place. He was just outside the points, so his teammates' kind of fault kind of helped him there a little bit. But both of them, solid qualifying for where they have been previously in the past. Knocked out in Q1, they did a much better job yesterday. And then, up until that point, running quite well, kind of battling the Toro Rossos.
It's a kick in the balls, isn't it, when you get a puncture on the last lap of the Grand Prix? Although it wasn't a random puncture. We know why he got the puncture. It was quite an odd incident between... It looked like Kvyat was quite...
Well, Kvyat went deep. Almost like he saw Magnussen in the mirrors, and then Magnussen himself went deep as well.
The pairing both went deep.
Yeah, and then you get that kind of rub-off of the front wing. We know how sharp these front wings can be with all their kind of end plates and cascades, and so I think that's where...
A lot of contact today. I'll give it that.
There was a lot of argy-bargy stuff.
Weirdly, I thought it was going to be it was something worse come out of the Sainz-Magnussen pit lane exit fiasco, because it's quite odd from Sainz. It's not the first time Sainz has done something where you go, why have you done that? Because on pit lane exit, obviously in Bahrain, he speared Stroll into turn 1, and I'm not really sure why. I think we know why. Toro Rosso obviously did have a faster pit stop than Haas. It was quite clever to obviously go to the other side of the pit lane because he knew that he would have hit him without having to get out of the throttle. And then obviously as they released the limiter, Magnussen must have just got so much more wheel spin because Sainz flew past him, but. you look at on board and you go, there's grass there.
Yeah, it's like the thing
grass.
is, it's not a straight pit lane. It's like a triangular pit lane, which kind of closes off after that white line. So you can overtake after that white line, but because of the triangular nature, it was going to sweep always towards Magnussen. So that grass was always going to kind of come there. And it's not like Magnussen's going to willingly give him the room there. Exactly. And he was still technically... He still technically was ahead by like half a car.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the funniest bit was when it was Carlos Sainz when he pushed me off the track. How can he push him off the track if you're in the same place that you were before?
Is it pushing really, or rather you've driven off the track?
You've just driven off the track and just done a bit of lawn mowing.
You know, I'd love to defend him, but it just
it was just an odd one for him.
A clumsy one again. So we talked about Sauber. Ericsson, 11th place, decent, but obviously a bit completely outshadowed by his teammate there. And then McLaren, we spoke about Van Dorn, we've spoken about Alonso really, got punted off at the start, really quite a shame from P7 down to P12, and then all round through the race, just driving to how as much as he could, being overtaken in a straight line easily by the Williams car. Towards the end, with some DRS, re-overtook the Williams cars, actually had some pace on the soft tyre right at the end there, but that's because he did a 3-stop in the end there. I think it was on used soft tyres. So, yeah, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, but then you consider it was, one extra pit stop, new tyres there. So really, good that at least he finished the race. I'll give them that. They finished the race, so good effort. They finished the race, and at least in qualifying, going back to that, kind of did show that, as much as we kind of mocked maybe McLaren for saying they would be winning races, they had a good engine. Their chassis is not horrible. It's good enough for him to get the job done in the corners. Like, he didn't put a foot wrong, and it was clearly all just lost time on the straights for his P7.
Barcelona, I think it's been said countless amount of times, is a chassis circuit. Why do you think Mercedes and Ferrari were miles ahead of the rest of the field? It's just because it's a chassis circuit. So if McLaren have got a decent chassis and the Honda being 8 miles an hour slower in a straight line compared to the Ferrari, props to McLaren. That they've got a decent chassis, and also just props all around because Alonso finished the race, didn't do the illustrious retire on the last lap thing, which that can be put down into the bin. And Van Dorn crashed. Well, it retired because of not an engine failure.
Yeah, it wasn't a mechanical thing. So
brain going, ooh, there's a car there. Let's turn in on him.
Alonso's got a flight, I think, later this evening to Indy. He's got a whole week of practice ahead. So
he's got practice
next
tomorrow.
time at the Monaco Grand Prix, it won't be Fernando Alonso, number 14 in that car. It'll be JB22. So it'll be interesting to see how they go at Monaco. P12 here at Spain, which is a, as you said, chassis circuit. Monaco, even more so in terms of not a chassis circuit, but more of a driver's circuit. But that basically means that the engine means even less than it did here in Spain. So P12 here could mean some last little points there for McLaren potentially if JB or Stoffel can put it together in Monaco. So we'll see for them. We'll see. But still so ways to go. And, even though it was a great P7, it's like I think Brundle said it, a lot of commentators said it, tear to your eye that we're sort of celebrating so hard that he's got a P7. So,
I know, it's kind of sad, isn't it? But actually, going down to P13 for Massa, should we talk about the Vettel Massa Pot 2?
Yeah. Lovely.
Which a lot of people, I saw some fucking awful comments about Massa on Twitter.
It's 50-50, I think. Massa did get out of the way going deep, but he kind of slowed down the wrong part of the circuit for me. I feel like he should have slowed down on the entry to the corner going wide and on the kind of turn-in rather than where he slowed down the exit. But at the same time, also, Vettel may have misjudged it a little bit. But I still think it was a non-issue. It shouldn't have been happening. I think he could have just easily let him go on the straight.
Yeah,
like,
it just
I don't care how much you want to talk about, Vettel should have seen the room. At the end of the day, he's blue flagged. And yes, he's going to lose some time. Let's be honest, he wasn't fighting anyone. He was ahead of Magnussen, who had a puncher. He wasn't going to catch Alonso because Alonso actually had some great pace at the end there where he's setting fastest laps that he's done all Grand Prix. So just lift off on the straight, mate. Just let him through.
It just struck me that Vettel outbroke himself, and I was just like, well...
Yeah, that as well. I said,
don't
that
try
as well.
and ram the car in front of you. Because if he was on his own, he wouldn't have outbroke himself.
Yeah, in terms of the actual incident itself, it's 50-50. But at the end of the day, for me, blue flags, he could have just done it somewhere else a lot easier. Same thing with Ericsson. Ericsson let Hamilton through in the strangest place just before the high-speed chicane. It's like, I know these drivers want to continue on, but there is that rule there for a reason. So
I think there's a massive argument that, especially around a circuit like that, you go offline, look at the sea of marbles that there is on the outside, and the moment you go offline, and you hear it all the time about Pirellis, the moment you lose temperature, that's
it's hard to
gone.
bring back. It's hard to bring back.
And if you were supporting that driver, or if you were that driver, and you ruined, you could be like lap 2 into your stint, and you've just gone offline, and that's your whole stint down the drain. So I can't. You can see why, and also Massa was the one that put his hand up in that incident rather than Vettel, and it's understandable because obviously Massa got out the throttle and tried to let him by in the corner. And then obviously he lost all the time in the next little part, like the little minute straight, because Vettel was busy like flapping around behind him. Yeah. So overall, it's just a bit of a clumsy incident. If I'm honest, but
constant issue in F1 really. But so that pretty much rounds out the entire grid then, really. So the rest of it, obviously, we mentioned Magnussen with puncher, Palmer 15th, Stroll 16th, and then the rest of them are all out of the Grand Prix: Bottas, Van Dorn, Verstappen, Raikkonen. But all in all, Cal, really enjoyable Spanish Grand Prix. It was a delight to watch. Really nice to see how this is slowly bubbling up to be better and better each race between Hamilton and Vettel. And for the championship, good that actually Hamilton won in a way, because it closes up the gap a little bit between there, just keeps the tension going. And on the flip side, unfortunate for both their respective teammates, but all in all, down the field, great battles, thoroughly enjoyable Spanish Grand Prix.
Oh, yeah, you can't really ask for more, to be honest, especially after Russia, where we all fell asleep, basically. Yeah. But, no, we can't really complain. I think it's a solid 8 out of 10 from me, and
I would agree.
I'm really relishing this battle between Hamilton and Vettel, because the thing is, even with this little bit of nudging and fighting and just strategy battles, there's still a huge cushion of respect between them two drivers, which was never existent between Hamilton and Vettel. And when you've got Hamilton sitting there going, "Oh yeah, we banged wheels coming out the pits. I want to do that more often." Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and and with the race stewards once again being so lenient on the petty little incidents last year, half them ones that popped up on the screen, they'd have had a penalty, and that ruined it. It completely ruined it. So overall, solid race.
Awesome stuff, and it sets us up. I know that there's a lot of cynics out there that time and time again, every time this Grand Prix comes around Monaco, they'll bring up the fact that nothing really goes on the race. But for me, every time it comes round, no matter remembering last year's race, remembering years gone by races, where it's been a procession, Monaco for me is always a buzz, and to see these new cars around Monaco is going to be so exciting.
Yeah,
in FP1, I'm definitely going to be tuning in FP1 just to see them for the first time. Then qualifying is going to be so electric, I think, with everyone on the limit. And then who knows, in the race, if the Ferrari and Mercedes can keep together, there may not necessarily be an overtaking battle, but it'll be that sense of tension and urgency from either driver.
The tension will be off the scale,
and
definitely.
You may see some, olden days style defending, maybe, a la, the scenes we all know too famously at Monaco, weaving left and right through the chicane. It's going to be hopefully a good one. I believe, though, Callum and Tom, you may not be here for that podcast. So
no, I was going to have to find some new friends for next week.
I'll have to try and see, either I may one-man it, or I'll try my best to see if I can get some other people that I know that may, people like Joe or Hayden, maybe potentially. So I don't know if they're watching, but wink, wink, maybe send me a DM. Maybe we can try and get something together, but it's quite hard. It's a good reason why me and Tom and Callum always work together, because usually our schedules sync up very, very well compared to most other people. So we'll see what happens with that. I guess you guys will find out on Sunday when it comes, I guess. But if you did enjoy this podcast, hit that like button. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do subscribe to this channel for the podcast. Check out Callum, link in the description. Twitter handles above our names as always. So always a great place to get in the discussion with F1 during the Grand Prix. It's a great place to be, Twitter. But as usual, you can catch this on audio as it would have been on screen the entire time. So if you're not following us over on SoundCloud, do get followed over on there if you want to see it on the audio. But that's been the Spanish Grand Prix review. Hope you have enjoyed this podcast. Hope you enjoyed the rest of your Sunday, guys. And we'll see you guys next time.